Hello, builders, and welcome to a new episode of Building SaaS on AWS, the AWS SaaS Factory show for builders of SaaS here on Twitch. My name is Anthony McClure, and I am a solutions architect with the AWS SaaS Factory and your host for the show. If you are currently a builder of software as a service solutions, or even just beginning to learn how to design, build, deploy, and operate applications in multi tenant environments, then this is the show for you. See, in every episode, we strive to bring you subject matter experts that can dive deep into the many and varied topics related to software as a service, and today's show is no exception. On today's show, we're going to be touching on a subject that is very important to every organization, and that is getting paid. Specifically, we're going to be discussing monetization around SaaS, and specifically with APIs and AI and this concept of usage based billing. But before we jump into today's content, if you are joining us here live today on Twitch, please jump into chat. Say hello to Mr. Bill Tarr, who is acting as our moderator once again today. Let us know where you're from. Are you currently building software as a service solutions? What are you working on? We're always love to hear from our audience. Also, if you have any questions for myself or our guest as we get into today's content, please feel free to put those into chat as well, and we'll try to answer those as soon as we can. But before we dive in here, if you are there in chat as well, be sure to hit the follow button if you like this kind of content that AWS is bringing to you and you would love to see more of that. Also, following today's episode, it will be available as well on our YouTube channel that you can watch video on demand at any time. If you're viewing this content on YouTube, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so that you get notified whenever we have a new upload available for you. So, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into today's content. In order to help us dig into this concept of monetization in SaaS, I would like to welcome to the stage here Mr. Derek Gilling of AWS partner Moesif. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us here, Anthony, and super excited to be talking about usage-based billing and monetizing APIs.
Awesome. Yeah. Maybe we should start out with just a little bit of an introduction, Derek. Tell us a little bit about yourself and also about Moesif.
Sure, definitely. So I'm the CEO of Moesif, and we're the leading API analytics and monetization platform. Our main goal is to really help folks monetize their APIs and AI-based applications with a usage-based model. Why is usage-based billing really important? Well, it's a new way for you to align the customer value to the cost that they're spending with your platform. It also allows you to actually drive up expansion and new revenue. Oh, Anthony, you're on mute.
Oh my goodness, I'm not even sure how that happened, but thank you for letting me know before I started going on a spiel here. Thanks, Derek. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so this whole concept then, as far as Moesif is concerned, and this usage-based billing, what exactly is that? It's certainly a topic that's kind of floating around out there today.
Sure, definitely. So usage-based billing or consumption-based billing, there's different terms for it. Is this notion that you're charging your customer for what they're actually using versus what they may have committed to use upfront. For the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of SaaS-based applications charged with a per-seat model or some type of subscription-based or flat-based model. While that worked really well for the UI-based applications, when you look at something like an API, or maybe even these newer AI agents and the like, per-seat pricing doesn't even make sense, right? Because you don't necessarily require 100 people to be logging into your API console to be administrating it. And so what we've seen is a lot of these types of applications move towards a use-based billing model that enables the customer to get pay for only the value that they're receiving through the platform and nothing more. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can actually manage use-based billing. There is the prepaid model where you purchase a number of credits, which are then burned down over the course of days or weeks or months. Popular companies like Twilio and Cinch and the like have made it very popular because it allows them to get their customers to pay up front while at the same time still have a use-based model. There's another model where you get a monthly invoice. You can sign up for your AWS account and spin up a couple services and pay for only what you needed, right? So if you used only a couple compute units or a couple hours, that's all you paid. You didn't commit to a full year contract up front.
Very interesting. And so do you see then this being kind of an industry trend of enterprises and companies moving towards this usage-based billing?
It is. It's part of a broader trend that we're seeing, which is the notion of developer first or product led growth. How do you enable someone to get up and running with your platform very quickly without committing a lot upfront and then growing with your customers? How do you enable them to start with a small POC account and maybe it's a very, very small token amount? Could be just a couple dollars a month. But then as they deploy the application or the integration to production, they might scale from just a couple of dollars a month to tens of thousands of dollars a month or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And so providing that flexibility for your customers to really just pay for what they're consuming around your service, very different model than thinking about, a couple of years ago where you're spending, months on end negotiating with procurement and going through all that, financial and legal, the whole dance we like to call it, right? So
Right.
really trying to meet your customers where they don't need to pay anything more than what they really need.
And I can back that up as well. And here at at the SaaS factory, as we're working with our partner customers, we're hearing these same sorts of things as well, coming from partners, customers that we work with. That this whole concept of consumption based or usage based billing is an area that they want to get into. But along with that, though, there's a lot of questions that come with it, especially around the how. Right? How do we do this? Because it seems like this is actually fairly difficult prospect to do. What would you say to that?
It is. It's a technically challenging implementation to roll out, but on top of that, it's a process change as well. So when we just look at the technical feasibility of usage-based billing, it does require a lot of data infrastructure to handle the metering, reporting, integration with your billing system. And the key thing is we're talking about billing data here. So, what you may have used for, logs and traditional observability, you can't necessarily use that same type of infrastructure for billing because you need an audit friendly way and a way to ensure accuracy. The worst thing you do is what if you start double counting events or double counting metrics or have no traceability to this usage was related to this invoice and the like. But then there's another piece to it, which is a process change. The worst thing that can happen is one of your customers signs up expecting to pay a couple $100s for this month. They get a $30,000 usage bill. No
Right.
one wants to explain that to your engineering manager why I signed up for this service and suddenly the usage blew through the roof. And we're
And that's
starting to see
never
this,
happened at it.
especially with
And that's never happened at AWS before, right?
hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But definitely, I mean, it's just something that we now have to manage from a go-to-market standpoint, from an analytics standpoint. How do you make sure your customers are always getting the right value and the best possible experience from the platform?
And of course, now with artificial intelligence, machine learning, generative AI really taking the world by storm, many companies investing in this as well. The immediate thing that comes to the surface is, hey, this is a fairly expensive prospect here. So, do you see as well that this AI wave accelerating this concept of usage-based billing and trying to understand, how customers are consuming these services?
We do. The AI wave is providing a lot of tailwinds around usage-based billing, but on both sides of the spectrum, because you have your usage-based revenue, which allows your customers to pay for only what they need. But the reason also is because there's a lot of usage-based costs to consider, right? A lot of these foundational models and AI APIs are also usage-based. And so you need to make sure your unit economics work out well for your application that you're building. And, worst thing is, what if you have a subset of users that actually consume way more of your vendor's usage than they're actually paying into your service? So having the right reporting and actually aligning your usage-based revenue to your usage-based cost is a very important thing, especially with these AI applications.
Yeah, one other area that I know comes up as far as our customers are concerned is those customers that are transitioning from traditional software development into SaaS. They're used to dealing, like you said, with these kind of large contracts and whatnot, and now moving towards this subscription-based model with this usage-based billing. Sometimes this is very, very overwhelming and kind of overruns them as well. So there's certainly a lot of interest in moving in this direction and designing your SaaS billing around it, but the how to get there is a very difficult prospect for many. When we're talking about actually getting paid, or this process, though, we also hear a lot about this concepts between prepaid and postpaid, when things are done. From your perspective, really, and your expertise in this area, around usage based billing, what are the different types of models, and where do you see them being used?
Definitely. There's a lot of different models, and there's no right model for each particular business. Each business is unique. We see a lot of companies starting off with the postpaid model, where you track that usage over the last month, quarter, year, whatever that period is, and then send that invoice to the customer. Nice thing there is it is easier to implement, especially when we look at things like revenue recognition and accounting flows. There's this newer model, though, which is prepaid. Some folks call it pay as you go, where a customer can purchase credits, say $10,000, and those can be actually used just whenever they want, right? And so they don't have to worry about they have to use these credits within the next month or the next 3 months. And so it's a lot more flexible, especially for what I call these very choppy businesses. So if you look at SMS, for example, a lot of their customers, they might have a 1 month where it ramps up very quickly because it's election month or election year. But the next month it tapers down. Now that's great because now you're allowing your customers to spend only when they need, almost like a gift card. But now things like revenue recognition is even trickier, because just because a customer purchases $10,000 in credits, that's still not actual service. And so now you have to
Mhm.
think about how do you implement that with your accounting flows. And so you can kind of see with these usage-based models, it touches a lot of different areas of the business, everything from engineering to accounting to product. How do you package the software and everything else?
Yeah, like everything in SaaS and in general application development on the cloud these days, when you're providing a service, it gets very complex very quickly as far as how to organize this. And from a builder's perspective, we really have to be thinking about these things ahead of time, right? To ensure that we're putting in the correct hooks, the correct pieces into our applications. But I also feel that, on the other side of this, yeah, we can collect all these metrics, but how do we actually then turn that into, or get that into, some sort of monetization with billing? And I assume, of course, that's where Moesif really plays a huge role here in the, what you've developed to help our customers to make those goals happen. But when we're looking at this concept of usage based billing, and or consumption based models here, how does one even begin to decide, what metrics that you're going to bill on, how that's going to flow? What's the process that you usually recommend?
I usually recommend, look at what does customers get value out of. Let's pick on a email platform. It's an email API, and there's maybe two different metrics we can look at for this email API. One would be, customers can create templates or email HTML templates and store those in the platform. That's one metric. Another metric would be sending emails. How many different emails were sent per month, or how many distinct email contacts were reached per month? Well, let's say we pick the first metric. How many templates are stored in the email platform? Is it 50 or 100? Well, if a customer signs up and creates 100 templates, but doesn't even send a single email, did they really get value? They didn't
Mhm.
reach anyone, right? And the main goal of signing up for this platform is maybe they're trying to scale out SDR function or marketing function and reaching out to more prospects and customers. And so in that case, a better metric might be tracking the number of unique emails sent or unique contacts reached. And so taking a step back and thinking about what is it that the customer is trying to get out of this platform,
Mhm.
and then trying to meter around that usage. Another example I like to give is, if you look at things like SMS and telecommunications, it's not necessarily just the number of API calls, because you might have a batch endpoint, right? And so you can send one text message through one API, but you can also send 100 text messages through that same API, which hopefully we're recommending to customers how to be as efficient as possible. And so again, looking at not just number of API calls, but what was the actual business transaction flowing through the platform.
Very, very interesting. And yeah, I just want to call out Bill here because he put a note into chat, and I'm 100% in agreement with this. I really love this way of thinking because you're focusing in on the value that your customers are getting out of the solution, and then putting your monetization around that versus these arbitrary metrics, right? Uh, numbers of users and things like that. So it's a very different way of thinking though, but I very much like it. So when you're talking to folks about this concept, is it a difficult thing for people to understand, or are you able to pretty quickly get that through to them that this is a better way to go?
There's no right answer to that. It's definitely a new paradigm and a new shift, a way of thinking for monetization. But it's no different than the SaaS way we saw, moving away from on-prem, 10, 15 years ago. And
Sure.
that was a new way of thinking. The cloud was just new at that time, and folks were still wrapping their heads around the data security and privacy and compliance and everything else. And how do you even roll out that model, right? Because everyone is so used to these perpetual licenses. These days, we're seeing something very similar, but the nice thing is there is a lot of companies out there, a lot of material to help guide new customers moving towards this model. And it's something that we're already seeing as customers asking for this, right? And so as
Mhm.
customers are asking for this, there is that push to move towards this model, and it's a win-win situation.
Well, this is obviously a fascinating topic, but as an engineer at heart, and I know my builders are thinking this way as well. I really want to know more about Moesif and the solution that you're offering. You talk. Let's maybe dive in a little bit into the technical aspects here of your solution and how it works. Let's see. We'll go ahead and share. Oops, what you're looking for there. Yeah. Yeah, can you tell us maybe what does the setup and integration process look like with Moesif?
Definitely. So you can think of Moesif as three fundamental components. The first is around the observability of that usage. Who's using what? What's that usage trending like? Just giving the right reporting to product leadership, customer success, support folks, anyone else that's supporting customers around use-based billing. And then we actually have the monetization part itself, which is
Hmm.
how do you actually start metering that usage, getting that data into your billing system, whether it's Stripe or SAP or Zora. Lastly, we do have some customer guidance features, which is more around how do you report on that usage directly to customers so they can log in and track their own usage and how's it trending against what they were expecting to use. We have a lot of different integrations here on the left side that I'm showing. So with different API gateway vendors, Kong, Amazon API Gateway, along with other folks, Amazon Firehose, we have a Logstash integration. So a lot of different ways to get that event data into Moesif.
Very
Just a quick,
interesting. Oh, sure. Sorry. Go ahead.
no worries. Quick cross section of our customers, which is a lot of different SaaS applications are moving towards a use-based model. We see a lot within the Gen AI space, of course, with U.com, Pika, Starting.ai, and the like. But we see a lot of traditional companies as well. So UPS, Covetrus, Cinch, and many, many more.
Yeah, I
One
mean,
one
on
last.
yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Anthony.
No, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, no, it's this is a very common problem, right? It's certainly not just a SaaS problem.
It is. And one last architectural diagram, because I love architectural diagrams. This is what most of looks when you integrate with a billing solution like Stripe. And that's a key thing that makes most of unique compared to some other providers out there, which is we're not a walled garden. We are an open platform for the enterprise. It's kind of important if you already have SAP or Stripe set up, it's very hard to rip that stuff out. Try and convince your accounting
One quick
team
second.
to.
Yeah, Derek, I think we're seeing. I think we're seeing your presenter view, or the audience is seeing the
Oh,
presenter view. So maybe if
whoops.
you, yeah, no worries. It
That's
happens.
us.
Yeah, it does to me as well. So while you're pulling that back up, then one thing that you did. There we go. Okay, better. Sorry, I interrupted you there. Go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, one nice thing for Moesif is we do integrate with existing billing systems, so you don't have to rip and replace whatever invoice and billing you already have. This will keep your accountants and finance team happy at night, even as product engineering looks at ways to migrate towards a usage-based model.
Very interesting. Now you mentioned, billing in general, and your bill, customers can use billing providers that they're already familiar with. Is that a service that Moesif offers as well, or are you really, focused more on the monetization aspect and the consumption?
Our goal is to focus around the metering, the consumption, the observability, and everything else. And then it's really a bring your own provider. Stripe is best in class, but we see a lot of other best in class services, whether it's Zora, SAP, ChargeBee. We see a lot of different customers using different services. The main goal there, though, is we don't want to replace the invoicing flows that Stripe did so well on,
Right.
right? They did a pretty good job.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's one of those situations that, don't reinvent the wheel, right? So the
Exactly.
reintegration story makes perfect sense and really opens up the world for your users to use whatever they're familiar with, or like you said, those best in class. And the same thing is true for this consumption based billing. If I'm looking at it from a customer's perspective, an organization's perspective that wants to do this, instead of building and spending your hard earned resources trying to build out these types of things, to do the aggregations, to do the consumption, to pull in all of the data, focus on your IP and then let someone like you, Mosif, to actually handle that heavy lifting.
That's exactly correct, Anthony. And one thing we've seen is, it's easy to get started, with simple usage-based billing. Maybe you're just tracking requests per second or something like that, which is great. That's an engineering metric. And, as an engineer at heart, we love
Right.
looking at engineering metrics. But going back to aligning those metrics to customer value, you're
Value.
going to start getting a lot of requests from product, go-to-market teams. How do I adjust my pricing model? How do I change to these different metrics? And that's where something like Moesif comes in is not just about getting the basic plumbing in place. It's really around experimentation, analytics, everything else that's required to move and ensure that your model is correct, right? Are you leaving money on the table?
Absolutely, certainly, and again, yeah, I love that concept of value. It's so much better. Uh, From an engineer, again, right? We're always looking at those performance-based metrics and usage of our solutions, but that doesn't mean as much to our actual customers that are really viewing this from a business perspective, right? Are we making money or not? How can we capitalize on the resources and the value that our customers are getting from our solutions? So it is a very big paradigm shift, but a really important one, especially for SaaS based businesses. So,
Exactly.
yeah, now maybe if we're talking about here how Mosif integrates with our customers, and of course we're looking this from an AWS perspective here today. So, what AWS services does Mosif have connectors for or integrate with?
Definitely. So we actually have three different integrations, and all of these are phenomenal ways to get up and running in really just half a day of work. First, we see a lot of folks using our Amazon API Gateway integration. It's no code, so it's really just a cloud formation template you can deploy and have all the components deployed. We also have a Kinesis Firehose integration for folks who want to directly ingest that event data and not using Amazon API Gateway. Of course, we did a lot of work with the SaaS Builder Toolkit. So for anyone that is actually building a brand new SaaS application, it's a great way to have all of the components in a modular way around use-based billing, to authentication, to analytics and everything else. And that's actually we're one of those modules along with a lot of other partners of AWS. And of course, if one of these integrations don't work, we have our SDKs for different languages and other API gateways and management platforms out there as well. So a lot of different ways to get the data into Moesif. And our goal is, of course, get up and running so you can start really starting to build that monetization model.
Yeah, and I see Bill actually dropped into chat here. There is a link that also shows that you have an integration as well with the new SaaS Builder Toolkit, right?
Exactly, exactly. Super easy way to get up and running as you're building out a new SaaS application.
Amazing. Yeah. And for those that are not familiar, the SaaS Builder Toolkit is a newer resource that AWS SaaS Factory is bringing to the market. It is an open source solution containing code modules that can assist you in ultimately building out a new SaaS solution or converting or migrating an existing product to SaaS. And Moesif was one of the first vendors to actually create a plugin for that. And of course, we're very appreciative to you, Derek, for providing that for us.
Of
So
course.
yeah, so we talked about API Gateway, and many solutions, of course, are built on top of that as far as AWS is concerned. But is is API Gateway a requirement for working with Moesif?
No requirement whatsoever. In fact, you can use Kinesis Firehose. You can use one of our SDKs. So if you have a Python-based application, you just drop in an SDK and that data is collected. We've seen folks collect data from Segment or from a Logstash and other event streaming platforms as well. Again, our goal is flexibility for different applications, and especially at larger organizations, each business unit or each department might actually have their own tech stack. And so if you're trying to productize and build out these APIs, sometimes it's actually important to collect data from many different sources, not just one.
Mhm.
And so that's something that Moesif can do as well.
Very, very neat. So I know, of course, our builders are always excited to see how these things actually come together, what it actually looks like in practice. So is there some a demo maybe that you can show us today?
Sure, definitely. So let's actually dig into a demo here. And so what I'm showing here right now is I'm just jumping into our Gen AI dashboard. Or actually, let's jump into this demo. This is one of our dashboards I'm showing, which shows different product metrics around top users for each endpoint, number of different e-sign doc titles. Main goal here is, again, just getting the idea of the product metrics around this platform. In this demo, it is an e-sign API. So not surprising that we see things around the e-signature side.
Mhm.
Let me just walk through first what the integration looks like very briefly. And I think the fun part is building out those monetization models and then looking at how is that trending and how do we actually experiment around that monetization. So in this case, if we want to integrate with, say, Amazon API Gateway, you
Mhm.
can actually just log into Moesif. There's going to be a button that says Launch Stack. Of course, this is a cloud formation stack. We can import that into Terraform or whatever it is that you're using for IAC. And then that will deploy a couple components within your Amazon API Gateway, or sorry, Amazon AWS account, and everything else is handled by Moesif. We are a SaaS, platform at heart, and so we want to be fully managed, and so you don't have to manage this data infrastructure. This integration is really around focusing on two things. One, handling the data collection in terms of the API traffic, and two, the right instrumentation to block users when certain actions happen, which may mean they ran into a quota limit, they ran out of
Ah,
prepaid credits,
right.
their invoice wasn't paid, just having that right instrumentation. If you're
Very
using
nice.
something else like Node, you can just drop in the Node SDK, which behaves very similarly.
Very, very neat. So, in that case, then Moesif, with its integration directly to API Gateway, can act as that limiter for those set values. For instance, if there are credits that have been prepaid, like the prepaid options that we talked about earlier.
It can, and this is somewhat of a shared duty, right? So if you're looking for more basic rate limiting, 100
Yeah.
requests per IP address, most of it is not the right tool for that, right?
No.
That's where you look
An
to the
API
API
Gateway can do
gateway
a
and
lot of that as well. Yeah.
infrastructure, and Amazon is going to be the phenomenal product for that. But when it comes to the business rules, such as you have X, transactions for the 30 days, or you ran out of prepaid credits, that's where most of it can come in, and it works with the API gateway APIs and everything else to handle that blocking. And so it's a great way to enforce that type of business rule logic.
Very, very interesting. That is a great feature to have as well, because this, again, when we're having these conversations with our customers about implementing this, is the business objectives that the customers have don't always correspond with the timelines necessary to get their products actually out to market and up and going when you're focused on your own IP, and yet you have all of these external SaaS related things and organization or billing or business related topics that need to be added. Having a solution like Moesif that can take a lot of that heavy load away from you for those business related objectives is a very powerful feature that you have here in the tool.
Definitely. And in fact, let's just walk through how easy it is to create a quick pricing plan. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our product catalog here. And going back to what I was mentioning at the beginning of the show was that we can link to your existing billing system so that you don't have to replicate all of that into a new system. So this demo account is already linked to Stripe here. So I have a pro plan in Stripe. And I'm just going to create a very simple volume-based tiers. We'll say the first 10,000, typically we like to encourage our customers to use more. And so the first tier here we're saying is 5 cents. And the second tier we're just going to say is 2 cents per unit.
Nice.
We'll just give it a name. Tiered price. Create. And now we have a couple things we can do with this price we just created. We can go ahead and create a billing meter to go meter that usage. We can create a governance rule to block when certain things happen. So let's just go ahead and click on create billing meter. And in this case, because that event data is already being tracked within the Moesif platform, it's super easy for a product owner to come in and build out the rules for the different meters that they want to track. Let's say the first meter, we just want to track API call volume. But I only want to look at a specific API. So I'm going to go ahead and click on, here, it's not loading.
Live demos, right?
Yeah. There we go. E-signature document API. And let's say the attachments API. But going back to the customer value piece, we only want to charge them when it's a successful API call. Of course, if they get a 500 error, it doesn't make sense to charge them. So let's add a filter for status code is less than 400. Right now, we're just looking at event count. But let's say we take this one step further. We don't want to just look at number of API calls because we could actually take a batch of e-sign transactions through this API. So we're going to go ahead and select a different field. And we're going to say the sum of count, which was looking at the number of objects that is being passed in the payload in this case. And once that's done, we can say e-signs in body. Go ahead and create. And that's it. Once that's done, we now have our meter completely built within the Moesif platform. And if we go back to some companies here, we can probably click on one of these. And we're going to pull up a dashboard, and we can actually see their usage over time. All right, and so this is a company, customer in this case, called Gecko Board. It's linked to Stripe. They have a subscription, which is on the eSign Pro plan. And here we can see how their eSign request meter is trending over time, how they had a little bit of a spike in volume. It looks like about 90 cents yesterday. So we can actually, for a CS person or support, come in and see exactly how are they spending in real time, even before that invoice is sent.
Very nice. You also mentioned that this data is also available, or your customers can utilize dashboards that you've created to expose that for your end customers as well?
You can. So our goal with Moesif here is not just to provide the plumbing around how to set up metering and usage-based billing, but it's really around getting the right reporting, observability around that usage, both internally for customer success, sales, support, and other customer-facing teams, along with the customers themselves. My mouse died here. If I go back to this create new, we can actually jump into a quick usage report. I'm just go ahead and click on time series here. Look at last, say, 12 weeks and show the 7-day usage. So right now, I'm just looking at, so we add one more filter. We're going to group by company domain. Because we have some customer information being stored in Moesif, we can actually track that API call volume broken down by different company domains. So yux.com, ThoughtSpot, and the like. We can actually see, in this case, Zapier dropped off on July 15th,
Hmm.
and then actually now is going back up. Now,
Very interesting.
if I want to expose this to my customer, I can just click the embed button. We actually provide embeddable widgets for any of the dashboards already provided in Moesif. You can actually just create an embeddable widget, drop it into a customer-facing application or partner-facing application so they can see that usage as well.
Wow. Very, very nice. For those of you that are maybe joining us late today, and be sure to be here on time next time, you're watching Building SaaS on AWS. Today we are joined by Mr. Derek Gilling, CEO of AWS partner Moesif, who is discussing consumption-based or usage-based billing and how their solution can help your organization meet those billing objectives. There's some really interesting chat going on as well, Derek, talking about the differences. Or there's maybe a little bit of not confusion, but just some back and forth between the differences between billing and the metering that goes along with it versus the metrics and analytics, right, that kind of happens from an AWS or from a more technical perspective. But so there's certainly kind of a separation here. But that being said, in looking at this very chart that we have up here, if I'm thinking about SaaS from a customer success standpoint, this data at an organizational level is really, really valuable because by integrating with Moesif and looking at this, we could see, for instance, the tenant, the customer that you referred to here, that had a steep drop off in usage. That can be a really important sign to your customer success folks to say, hey, maybe we need to reach out to that customer. They might be at risk of non-renewal, right? They're no longer finding value. Again, coming back to that value conversation. So I can see that this capability that Moesif has here actually playing a really big role organizationally, even above and beyond billing.
It is. In fact, that's one of our strongest use cases we see, from folks like UPS to UK Royal Mail and the like, is actually building out these dashboards so they can track that usage in real time so they can reach out, right? Because the worst thing that
Yep.
happens is someone stopped using your API or service and no one knew about it. And then 5 weeks later, they canceled their plan or they stopped paying the bill and no one knew that, well, they just weren't getting enough value. Or we see the opposite happen a lot as well, which is folks that have a huge spike in volume, but they grew too quickly, right? And so I like to consider, healthy growth versus unhealthy growth. And healthy
Mhm.
growth is, you're growing your usage, maybe it's 10% week over week or 20% week over week. But if you see a new customer sign up and they were paying, X, and then the next week it's X times 1,000,
Yeah.
that could be very concerning from a CS standpoint.
Yeah. Very, very good point as well. Absolutely. No, this is fantastic.
In fact, I just switched the chart a little bit here to show growth rate. And so this is a little bit easier to comprehend what we were looking at earlier, which is, ThoughtSpot had that big spike in volume, 200% around that July period. And we have a couple of folks that dropped off a little bit. And so setting up these dashboards for CS and creating the right alert rules and the like can be super helpful to drive that type of function. In fact, jumping over to the CS dashboard, I already have a couple of different reports I built of customers hitting rate limits, customers with errors, and notice within all of these dashboards is very customer centric. Right? We don't
Mhm.
care in this case how many servers or how that disk space is trending. There's phenomenal products from CloudWatch, Datadog, and the like that focus more on the operational metrics and your infrastructure metrics. Our main focus is really around that product and business level visibility for these customer facing teams so they can support these usage based products.
So, anything else you want to show us, Derek?
Yeah, definitely. We can actually go ahead and build out what we call our conversion funnel or activation funnel.
Mm.
This is something that's really important as we look at these API based products. And we like to talk about things like time to first hello world or time to
Mhm.
first API call. And so I'm going to actually build out a funnel here. In this demo account, I actually have our browser.js integration set up as well. So if you ever set up a Google Analytics or Segment, it looks very similar. We have integrations with those particular platforms where I can track actions happening within a developer portal or some type of application. And I'm going to put on our next step here, first API call, because that's the main thing we want to get to is hopefully folks get to their very first API call. We're going to say they got through the e-signature documents API. And we're going to add one more step here, which is over 10 API calls.
Okay.
Now, why am I showing this 3-stage funnel of, actually, let's say 100 API calls? Because it's great for, a customer to make that very first API call, but typically that's done during like a POC or testing
Testing
stage.
page, right? Yeah,
They
integration
might be
process.
using Postman or curl, but really what we're after is how long does it take for a new customer to create that full working application they can demo to their internal team members, their engineering manager, to customers and alike. And that's where we can see this over 100 API calls. We can actually see in this case, about 55% of this customer base gets that first API call, but no one got over 100 API calls. It's probably a concern here that no one is really getting to what we consider real value out of this API.
Right. So that can actually then help as far as the pruning process is concerned as well, and what feature sets are even actually being utilized by your customers.
Exactly. And in this case, I might look at, well, my documentation is good. They were able to use Postman to make that first API call, but why were they not able to get to over 100? Why did it completely drop off? I might need to do some customer interviews, might need to take a look at which APIs are struggling with. Is there something wrong with those APIs to understand deeper?
Absolutely, this is invaluable data, and again, these concepts, these thoughts are sometimes not even thought about by organizations that are beginning to move into SaaS for the first time, or really beginning to create maybe API based applications. That you need to think about all of these things, right? And having these metrics and analytics really helps you to grow your business, which is ultimate goal of everyone when we're building SaaS.
It does. And going back to the initial saying at the show is how do you understand the customer value out of your platform and not just API calls? Right now, we've been focused on just API calls themselves. But I think one thing it would be good to jump into is something more complex than just API call traffic.
Mhm.
So I'm going to build another report here real quick. Let's look at company domain. And I'm going to build out a metric. Let's say, open this up. We're going to go into the payload. And one of the nice things about Moesif is we can dig really deep into that payload and everything else. I'm going to go ahead and click on title. Whoops. Let's group by title. And we're going to say event count. And so what we can see here is for each of these customers, what was actually being sent over the API, right? And we can actually slice and dice this data in many different dimensions and ways to understand different fields. So we have a customer u.com, for example, which is tracking input tokens and output token counts. We have other customers in the telecommunications space tracking number of characters that was set in a particular field. And again, this goes back to how we understand that usage and then how we build out the right monetization model around that usage.
Mhm. So, of course, right? This is all amazing information, and I'm sure most organizations would love to have this level of visibility into what's happening within their SaaS environments. But the devils are ultimately always in the details, right? So, one question that I have is, what does the process look like if a customer has, let's say, an existing SaaS solution or is in the process of building a SaaS solution and actually uh, integrating with Moesif, especially in a multi-tenant sense?
Definitely. So if I go back to our integration here, I'm going to pick on Node SDK in this case. And one of the nice things with all of our integrations is there's really just two components that we need to consider. One is how do we actually install the integration to instrument the application so we can collect that traffic. And the second piece is just identifying who the user is. So
Right.
in this case, we typically pull it out of like a JWT or some type of token that might have a user ID. You might have some other
Token
mechanism
identifier
within
or
your
something like that. Yeah.
exactly. And as long as we have that information, then all the traffic within Moesif can be attributed to a particular API, consumer or user. And then we can also link that to accounts and tenants and companies and everything else. And that's going to be done through the API directly.
Excellent. Very
And
interesting.
once that's done, if we jump back to users here, you'll notice in this case, we have all these users using the API, and they're all linked to some type of company. And so for any of these companies, we can actually jump into it, and we have a dashboard for all the users that are part of this company and some different stats that we built around success and failure rates and users broken down by companies or sorry, countries. Again, creating that dashboard so CS can come in and say, okay, for this tenant, for this account, what are all the usage metrics that I need to be aware of from a usage standpoint, from an error and issue standpoint, and everything else.
These these dashboards that we're looking at here within the Moesif interface, if a customer is building out their own control plane, their own administrative backends, are there tie-ins or there ways that you can embed some of this into backend solutions that are being built as well, or is the interface where most of your customers actually go to view this information?
We do. In fact, so any of the dashboards in Moesif can be embedded in BI tools like Tableau, Looker, and the like. So if you do
Nice.
already have, a BI solution, then these dashboards can be embedded in. We see a lot of folks do log into Moesif. We do provide a lot of advanced reporting, and these are all customizable to the T, from the colors to the layouts and everything else. We can customize this. 'Cause a lot of times different teams have different requirements. A
Hmm.
product team, wants to look at things in aggregate, but CS may want to look at things like who's my VIP customers and
Right.
how do they track against my non-VIP customers.
Fantastic. What about things like alerts, notifications? Most have handled that as well, both internally for the SaaS organization in this case, but also maybe from a customer perspective if things are out of whack.
We do. So I just went back to quick time series and I'm looking at again the daily API call volume broken down by top companies. And it's just as quick as clicking this alert button. And we can do both what we call static alerts, setting up a threshold, like when they breach a certain quota or certain threshold. But we usually recommend for our customers to leverage dynamic alerts, where we're actually tracking the historical trends for each of these customers. So we can alert you when there's a big spike in volume, a big drop off, just so customers are or your CS team is aware when something is happening with a particular customer, and we can route those to Slack, to PagerDuty. We see a lot of folks leverage the webhooks to drive custom workflows when one of these triggers do come about.
Nice. And the data itself, Derek, is the data available, like the raw data for this for a particular tenant? Just just for instance, maybe a tenant wants to grab that data, run some AML processing against it, or who knows. But just curious, as far as the data itself is concerned, is there a way for customers to get that?
We do. So we have a way to do bulk export into your data warehouse of choice, whether it's a Redshift or you just need a Parquet file and want to do some analysis there. We do see folks leveraging that for deeper analysis of this data.
Nice. Anything else you particularly would like to show our audience today? We're coming up a little bit short on time, but anything else you want to show?
I think the key thing that we want to stress is it's not just about setting the reports and dashboards, but how do you scale out your CS effort? And we do
Mhm.
have ways to send out emails at the right point in time, say when a payment is required or when a customer exceeded a quota limit of some sort. And so you can design those templates within the Moza platform, send that out, and you can use AWS email service, so you don't have to change your email infrastructure itself. We can integrate with those platforms, and again, building out those different dashboards and everything else So you're guiding your customers using your platform the right way. And, really it's just over communicate, right? So no one wants to
Yeah.
wake up and get that crazy bill and have to explain that.
Yeah, the more touch points, the better. Definitely in SaaS, working as a service again, very different than traditional product development. So having those touch points is critically important to keeping your customers happy and healthy, and therefore growing your business. Now, along with all of this, though, there's got to be some gotchas, right? When we're talking about usage-based billing, there's got to be things that are big landmines, holes in the road. Any perspective on that?
I would say the biggest gotcha we've seen is less around the plumbing, it's more around the CS side. It is still a new model for customers to be aware of the big gotchas. And it goes back to what we said at the very beginning, which is
Hmm.
customer gets a $20,000 bill. How do you
Yeah, what do you
prevent
do?
that?
Yeah,
And so
prevent it even better.
setting up the alerts for CS so they can track those VIP customers down to each account manager or each CS member. They have their daily dashboard of these are the folks that are in my red bucket or my concerning bucket, so I can reach out to these customers and get them on the right path to succeed. And a lot of it is working with the customer, whether it's right sizing the plan, letting them know that their usage is trending in a certain way, and helping them get the most value out of the platform.
Amazing. So, Derek, as we're coming up here to the end of the show today, this has been an amazing look into Moesif and how you can help out with this monetization from your SaaS. If somebody wants to get started with you or to learn more about Moesif, what's the best way for them to get started?
The easiest way is to go to our website, mosa.com. We have a free 14-day trial and self-service plans. And of course, if you have specific enterprise requirements, feel free to request schedule a demo, and one of our SAs will help you get up and running with the Mosa platform. And our main goal is to not just provide a platform, but to consult with you so you can set up the monetization rules and metrics in the right way. Of course, during this demo, we show the simple version of setting up a single metric. But for
Mm,
usage-based billing, the biggest thing is you can get very crazy with the amount of different consumption metrics and plans and everything else they can track and all the different
for sure.
attributes. And our goal is to help guide you on what are the right ways to track this and model that and make sure customers don't get overwhelmed by 1,000 different metrics that are now on their final invoice.
Certainly, certainly. Well, Derek, thank you so much for being with us here today. Any final thoughts for our audience before we let you go?
I'll just say, especially with the AI wave and of course with the API wave, usage-based billing is becoming a more common approach for monetization. It's definitely not easy, right? And I always look at this as an engineer, but also from a product and customer standpoint, a lot of times it's easy to get started with a best-in-class solution versus trying to go build everything in-house. And we can also help you with that process and guide you on, does it make sense to build? Does it make sense to buy? Which solution makes the most sense?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Derek, for being with us here today. Look forward to maybe having you back on the show again in the future. And thank you again as well to Moesif for working with us at the SaaS Factory and building in the integration with the new SaaS Builder Toolkit. Fantastic work. Have a great day, Derek.
You too, Anthony, and appreciate being here and talk about use-based billing.
Thank you so much. And to all of you joining us here today, thank you so much once again for being here, learning about SaaS on AWS. We love our audience. We love to have you with us. Some great interaction in chat today. Like to see that. Be sure to join us again in 2 weeks. We're going to have a fun show where we're going to have some AWS SaaS Factory folks on with myself, and we're going to be talking about reInvent 2024. Specifically, we're going to be going over the various different workshops and speaking engagements that our team actually has going on at reInvent this year. It's quite a lot. We have a pretty big slate, so we're all very excited about that. So definitely join us next time. For all of you here joining us today, thank you for being here. and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye bye now.